And so when their money was at risk and I made a comment about something, it triggered that same emotion to them because everybody is going to run out if we don't get this business off the ground. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Leadership Lab podcast. And I'm Henry Kirk and joined with Jonathan Aronson. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, so that way you can continue to get these awesome episodes every Monday on your commute to work or walk to work. So really interesting topic today. It's something that I realized the other day, Jonathan. I think it would be great for the listeners out there as well. So up until January, the end of January, I was employed at Google for 8 years. Prior to that, I was at Amazon. So for the past 10 years in my journey in corporate leadership, I have been employed, getting a paycheck every week. And what I noticed after having got laid off and trying to get myself back on my feet, and I took the plunge to start my own business now, which if anyone's interested, they can take a look at me on LinkedIn. I've noticed that my tension and my edginess has notched up in a variety of different situations because I feel that there is a lot of pressure on me. And what's happening is that certain interactions that I've had over the past couple months has caused me to react differently than I would have in the prior situations. And I'll give you a couple examples. So the other day, my partners and I were having a meeting about something, and it normally wouldn't have been such a high stakes conversation, but we're talking about everyone's future and how we will address certain things. And I made a comment, and I didn't intend the comment to be taken in a negative way, but someone reacted to it, and then the next person reacted to it. And I realized that I had caused an unintended emotional response to them. And then the rest of the discussion became kind of heated, and we had to try to de-escalate what had happened. Again, I didn't really mean it to happen, but it was just, all of us are in different situations, and we're all trying to basically take care of our families. And it got a little different. Now, if this was the same team that I'm going to be working with that I previously worked with several months ago, so would we have had such a heated discussion? No, probably not, because at the end of the day, there was that level of comfort there. And so if we were having a discussion, it was always on some engineering topic. And so I think the stakes changed. And also, there's been just a couple other interactions. So I'll start it with that. That I think, looking back, that I have brought a different experience to these situations that I then reacted in a way that I would not have done in the past. That's basically
it. Morning, Henry. How are you?
Morning, John.
So the thing that comes up to think about when you were triggered, right, and you've been tense, is what you're saying, is what do you think the other person felt who you were talking with? You said it didn't go well. So let's think about empathy, which is kind of putting yourself in the shoes of others. What were they feeling?
Yeah, I think that they might have felt attacked a little bit about what I had said, because it was, again, it was a discussion of how we're forming our partnership. And so it was a comment that I had made about something. And I think that they reacted to what I had said because it was a conversation that impacted either their potential financial situation.
Mm-hmm. Right. And pretty personal, potential financial situation.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And also, I want you to consider the person, what else might be coming into play for that person, meaning something in their personal life as well, just like yours come into play, that you were kind of putting that emotion out there, what you were feeling personally, what you were going through. A lot of people out there have spouses, so their partner, or is also influencing the conversation, right?
Hmm.
So, but when you came in, what was your mindset at the time when you were discussing this?
Well, usually in the past, I would have made sure that I was accounting for everyone's like potential backgrounds and experiences. So that way I
Hmm.
would be really careful with the words that I would use and how I would approach things. But, one thing had led to another, and I just made a comment. And it was not a typical comment that I would have made, but what ended up happening was, is I guess like for example, okay, there was a situation recently where my wife made a purchase at a store, and when she went to go try to make a return, they said sorry, no returns, okay, and that upset my wife. And so then I was like, okay, well, we'll just go back in and try to take care of it. Now, I had realized that like I was like the stakes were much higher in this particular situation than I would have been several months ago. Why is that? Well, the money that we had spent in the store that they wouldn't give back to us became the actual issue that I was probably focused on. And so, like, where I wouldn't have cared in the past, now I do, because, hey, my income is much different than it was now a few months ago, being let off. So my reaction to how I was entering that situation, that was the experience that was driving my reactions. It wasn't that like, it wasn't very much. So what ended up happening is the sales representative at the store wasn't being helpful to me, and that was like triggering me to like raise my voice a little bit, and probably act in a way that I normally wouldn't have acted, because I wasn't able to accomplish the goal that I was trying to accomplish. And then it kept escalating, and I wasn't being I didn't find that the person was being helpful to me. And what I realized after the fact, when I was thinking about it, is like, well, I didn't go and say, well, hey, this is really important to me. I need you to make this happen. Now, the Henry 3 months ago would have probably had said something like that, where let's take a step back here. Like, you realize you're not being helpful, and this is why I need help. I need help here. And I was not communicating that. Instead, I was like, I want my refund. In the same way, like when I was in the group with my partners, we were discussing money, and money is very important to everyone right now. And so when their money was at risk and I made a comment about something, it triggered that same emotion to them, because everybody is going to run out if we don't get this business off the ground, right? And so I think in those situations, like I was like, oh, I've been a little edgy lately about that, and I probably would have reacted a lot differently. Um, you know, so you had brought up something before we started recording here that I think we can dive into, which is like why some of the conversations continued to escalate, and you had said it was because the person on the other side likely didn't feel psychologically safe in this situation. And so maybe we can just like start from there, because I think that was a really good pre-conversation we're having. We can talk about it now.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for sharing your story. And also, I want you to think how maybe that really tied into stuff when you were employed, how you might show up as a leader and create this environment. And you're contributing to creating an environment that's psychologically unsafe. So, what does that
Hmm.
really talk about? So if you want to create a supportive culture, really, you have to kind of allow people to be able to express themselves without feeling attacked, without feeling bad, or shame. And this is where a lot of leaders, unintentionally, granted, are causing this, and it's through their ability to communicate. The term was first coined, psychologically unsafe, by Dr. Amy Edmondson, and is characterized by a team organizational environment where people can openly share concerns and mistakes without the fear of embarrassment.
Hmm.
So think about the story, think about both your stories, right? One was with one of your partners, and again, I talked about empathy because if you put yourself in their shoes, hey, am I feeling uncomfortable with this conversation?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. And Henry is coming at me and telling me how I should think and feel. All right. And maybe the same thing with the store clerk, because I kind of heard some things in there, even as you were saying how what you should have done was still very aggressive. Okay. You need to do this, and I'm not getting through to you. All right.
Yeah.
Instead of, let's figure out a way to make this happen, understand you don't have, from her point of view, she didn't have the authority to do what you were asking.
Yeah.
And I know you were asking to find out who it was who had authority, but you already had her on the defensive. So what do you think happened to her willingness to help you?
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I think, like, so obviously, like, I think that everybody needs to have this type of training and understand how to bring this right environment. Because in the past, I've been in situations at work where the leader just continually allows these sorts of situations to happen, and it doesn't go well for anyone. And at times when I've gotten feedback, so look, I'm very direct. I'm an engineer. I can be very binary on things. And so working on this type of empathy and skill, like, to be honest, I have learned it over the last 15 years of my career. I actually sometimes I struggle to see the other side of the story. And so when I realized that, like, our partner meeting was getting a little heated, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to de-escalate this, bring it back, like, recognize that we're all, like, tense here. It's that acknowledgement is important. But then I think what's important is that, like, we all get in arguments and fights and get heated with each other. And I think understanding how that happened and and explaining that this is a, safe environment that you should be able to feel, to speak up in is really important. So, people will get reserved sometimes when that happens. I've been in a lot of interesting situations over the years, and I've learned a lot. And there are times when I catch myself and I think I'm a lot better than I used to be. But what I've actually noticed in reflecting in the last couple of weeks is there's much more pressure on me now. And so I have to make sure that moving forward that I am taking that extra step again to kind of take, like, before I react and be like, okay, what is their situation? Because I'm been very aggressive with trying to get my business off the ground. I'm working a lot more hours than I typically have. And so I think that is then creating, situations. And then also my home life, right? My wife is worried about us getting started and, well, when are we going to run out of money and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of people in this situation now, and it's causing a lot of, like, I've had hundreds of conversations since I announced that I was starting this business with people that were laid off, people that were laid off in October that are like really getting desperate, and their back is truly against the wall and they need to find something to do. And it's interesting because I can totally understand where, if, they're going to be more emotional in situations because they're becoming desperate, right? And so I think that, like, this is a really, really important part of the whole psychological safety. Like, I didn't actually understand what it was till 7 years ago, I think it was, when I was wanted to be promoted at Google. I remember this distinctly, sitting at lunch with one of the directors, and I said, I really want to be considered for this new role. And I said, and he's like, well, I can't give it to you, Henry. And I was like, why? He's like, because you don't embrace psychological safety. And I said, oh, what's that? I never heard of that. And he said, go look it up or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. So I was like, all right. So then after that point, I'm like, all right, I'll go and check it out. And then that was when I got into a training program at Google, and I really flipped around a lot of my behaviors and stuff, and really realized that it was my lack of empathy, that I needed to work on. That being, you can only, I think we've talked about this in the past, and I know I'm going on and on here, but it's like your help over time has made me realize that it's being an engineer is good, but it's also one of my biggest faults because I look at things as like a very binary. It's a problem to solve. It's like, how do I do that? Well, I can build a piece of software to solve it thing. But like dealing with different people's emotions and how they come on a day-to-day basis, you know, I think that's been really, really hard. And it's always, I'm always learning something new and like different situations to figure out every day. So.
Well, you know, thanks for sharing that. You know, I want to say that I'm not saying this is easy, okay? But where it starts is with you, okay? With the person who has the problem, quite frankly, right? The shop girl was just going along, doing her thing, you know, and all of a sudden Henry shows up going, bark, 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 you know? And, or being insensitive in your partner meeting where you're bringing something up because you're tense. All right. Now, honestly, I used to be in the casino business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to manage casinos, and I used to tell the staff of the casino when they walk through the casino door, they leave their personal issues outside, and they'll be waiting for them when they come back out of work and go back out into the world. It's kind of the same thing, right? You don't get to, you know, poop on the people around you because you're in a bad mood. And that creates that psychological unsafety. And when that happens, they're shutting down, they're attacking back. All right, now think about at work. You're on a team. All right, somebody's got an opinion about something, you're having a bad day, you bark at them. They don't know what's going on with you other than you just attacked them. Or if you're leading somebody and you bark at them or you make them feel really bad, okay, now they're responsible for their own emotion, but if you're going to attack somebody, come on, somebody's going to feel bad about it and they're going to shut down or they're going to attack you back, right? Mm-hmm. So first, it's how you show up. And say, what am I really trying to solve here? Why are we here? Focusing, again, I think I've said it in prior podcasts, on the big picture, right? So were you focusing on the big picture in the store? No, you were focusing on, I want my money and I want it now, okay? Not the big picture is maybe I do want to get a refund, but I want to do it in such a way that is okay with everybody and they understand my situation and we can get this resolved. All right.
Yeah, and that is the big difference that I noticed with how I would have approached something in the past, because I used to be a very terrible negotiator, and I would, years ago, I remember like I would just really, you know, I said it, I'm a recovering jerk, really. And so many years ago, I would just basically be a lot worse and a lot more demanding with things. And I would not try to even offer middle ground or be nice. I would just come in to the situation really bad. And then I learned that, like, actually what really turned me a lot on, you know, just the whole customer service thing, I'll just point on this, is like when one of my businesses was failing in 2008 and I was losing everything, I had a similar situation where a customer I don't know what his situation was, but he wanted to return something past the return policy, and it was like $2,000. And I was like, sorry, I can't take a return. And, you know, he was like, it doesn't work, whatever the problem was. I remember he escalated it, and, you know, he was going to take me to like small claims court because that, you know, basically like, I guess he was looking back in the situation. He was probably desperate for some reason, maybe like I was as well, where here I am, like the business is crumbling and like I, you know, can't take a loss on something like that. So anyway, he returned it and it was all completely damaged. And it was maybe not his fault, but he didn't pack it correctly. And so this $2,000 piece of equipment was completely damaged and it was worth significantly less. And so I remember getting it back and I was like, oh, man, I was like, now I'm going to have to resell this for what I can. And I'm going to have to, you know, lose a significant amount of money. And what I realized is that my defense was I didn't want to lose money, right? And at the end, like here I was treating a customer like crap, where he could have continued to buy from me. And then he was upset. And again, this was in the middle of the financial crisis of 2008. So my stance was this one way, and I'm sure that his was the same way. And so after that, I learned, I was like, man, I was like, it's like my customers were what got me to where I was. And the reason the business collapsed was me, because I like the way that I treated this customer, the way that I operated the business. I wasn't a strong leader. And so I just couldn't really handle everything. So that was when I really started my journey on trying to learn and improve on there. But like when I look back to fast forward to today, I'm like, okay, my back is against the wall. And now I'm acting differently. So the question I'm going to have for you is, okay, I can work to become better and try to catch myself in these situations. But what should someone do on the other side, in the receiving side, when they see someone in this situation?
Great question. So there's a couple ways that I see what people mostly do. Okay, they'll just attack back. All right. How about something as simple as that? I'm feeling uncomfortable the way you're talking to me. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? What's the difference of saying, I'm trying to help, and I'm feeling uncomfortable the way you're talking to me about this? It's not helping me, helping you resolve the situation. Imagine if somebody said that to you. How would you react?
Yeah, you would put me in check and make me realize that I was, probably you need to take it down a level, perhaps.
But that's different than saying, you are making me feel uncomfortable. Okay? You want whatever you want. I'm trying to help you, and all you're doing is attacking me. You see the difference?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Okay? So you want to create psychological safety back as well. All right. Now, it's not saying that you can't have a discussion about if things go wrong and you can't bring it up. Of course you can bring it up. You just have boundaries. How are you going to talk and speak with each other? And by the way, Henry, what do you think when you attack somebody and they're uncomfortable with you and they're not too sure about you because you're triggered? What happens with trust in those situations? What do you think happens?
Very good point. Very good point.
Okay? And if the trust goes away, guess where your partner could go? Away as well, because they don't trust you anymore. Hey, this is only we're just getting started here, right? And you're already attacking me because I'm not giving you what you want. You're not talking to me anymore. You're just spitting words. There's a really great resource called the Partnership Charter, I think by David Gage or Gang or something like that. Anyways, he put together a whole process as what do partners needs? What do they value? How are they going to communicate? What are their aspirations within the partnership? When there are issues, how are we going to communicate and deal with it, right? They talk about all this before it escalates to an emotional state. Because what happens when you're in an emotional state, Henry?
Yeah, things go south. Yeah, of course.
Things go south. So what I'd like to do is and I love this statement, and I use a lot of my coaching. If you had to do a do-over, Henry, okay, and both the partnership and the store clerk, why don't you tell our listeners how you might handle it differently based on the conversation we just had?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I've been, I think I've been annoying my wife with just running through okay, well, what was it? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? And it's interesting because again, like I said, it clicked where I was like, that's why I reacted in these ways, is because there's an external force on me, right? And so now that I realize that, I can take a step back and say, okay, I don't want this to continue. So I obviously got to, hey, if anyone wants to hire me for, our business to write software, that'd be awesome. It'll take a lot of pressure off me. But anyway, how would I redo this differently? Of course, I would recognize that in my partner meeting, okay, I would probably set the stage and say, okay, all of us are, have a finite amount of resources to go through, and we need to be able to get things going. And, my comment would have been well, I don't want to go too deep in like what the situation was, but essentially I would have set the landscape for, I acknowledge that everyone is in the same situation as me. And we need to come to an agreement on how we're going to handle risk for one of the situations. And, you know, because I had snapped because I felt I was taking more risk in a certain situation. And they were potentially not seeing mine in the same light. It's fine. But what I realized is that to them, it is the same risk and they're in the same situation as me. Mm-hmm. And so I would have just said like, hey, this is the situation and we need to come to terms on this. Instead, you know, we were going back and forth and I made a stupid comment that, again, I didn't intentionally mean it that way. It just was taken that way. And yeah, exactly. And so, you know, then I did realize that people were heated and then we took it back, took it down. And then afterwards I had a follow-up, you know, chat with people because I said, hey, I know, and this is exactly a handle. I said, hey, I noticed that you got really upset, you know, at my comment. Didn't intentionally mean it that way. You know, give me that feedback that I needed, right? And on the flip side with the store clerk, I'll just be quick with that one, is recognize that they are likely powerless in what they need to do. And and basically help them get to the solution by saying, okay, I recognize that you can't do this, but this is what you need. This is what needs to happen. And instead I did do that, but I did it with like a raised tone. And I, you know, came across like a jerk with that, right? And so then they reacted a certain way, right? So that's what I would have done.
Okay. All right. So can I give you a little feedback on what you said?
Absolutely.
Okay. So with your partners, we talked about losing trust. All right. So the way to get a trust back is to apologize. All right. And an apology is, I realize I said something out of turn. Okay. I see you got upset. All right. That wasn't my intention. I want to apologize for that. And we'll work very hard on not making it happen again.
Yeah.
Don't promise something you can't keep because it could happen again, right? Right? But now, how do you feel about that? And how do we move forward from here? All right? What you want to avoid saying, listen, I'm sorry, you know, I snapped at you, but I've been under a lot of pressure lately. That, folks, is not an apology.
That's just an excuse, basically.
It's just, right. And that's what people do, right? The other thing I would suggest in your language, Henry, when you're talking to people, don't use the word need. You need to, or we need to. Use I statements, okay? I feel we need to do this, this, and this. You're assuming that the other person agrees with what you're saying. You're making that assumption. What if they don't? And you're coming in going, hey, we need to talk about this because we got to get this resolved right now before it goes, you know, because we're going to have more problems later. All right? So you need to think about this. Oh, boy. Does that create psychological safety? No. You're only thinking about your needs, Henry, not my needs. You're telling me what I need? Who are you? You don't know me. You don't know everything I've gone through. We're just getting started here. I don't know if I want to work with this guy. Yeah. Hopefully your potential partners aren't looking at this and going,
look, it was not like a huge fight or anything. It was like, it was a heated situation that is rare because we've worked together for the last 5 years. So these are people that I've worked with every single day for like 5 years straight, and we got along really well. And most of the disagreements we would have were just around engineering stuff. So it was just much different to be in a situation where it was a high stakes conversation, essentially, right? And there's a lot at stake for all of us. And what I think is really interesting at the end of when I had a one-on-one with one of my partners afterwards, you know, he'd made a comment, and I think this is very, very true. He's like, this is going to be one of many disagreements. I'm glad we at least resolved it at the end of the day. And I was like, you are absolutely right. And that is the right attitude to have, in that it's not the end of the world. We're going to overcome this, but we have to go into these situations acknowledging that, like, it got heated because because of the stress. Exactly what I was trying to figure out. Like, what the heck am I edgy for? Makes no sense. It's because I don't have a paycheck coming in anymore. That's the problem. I have like there are a lot of things that are
What
going
do
on outside that are
when you
then
have
causing it.
deadlines, Henry? When you have deadlines, does that not give you pressure on you? Right?
I
When
thrive under
bosses,
that stuff though.
I
That's the
know,
thing.
but
Yeah.
there's a lot. Maybe you thrive, but how does that affect other people around you?
Oh yeah, I
Maybe they,
that's the
right?
yeah. You really nailed it
Right?
on something. I've gotten feedback in the past that like when I have a goal, I will drive towards that goal like and I will push people aside if they are not on board with me. And this is a
Dog
whole
with a
nother thing for a whole
bone.
nother topic for a podcast. But it's you know, it's yeah, and it's very interesting. I'm getting when I announced on LinkedIn that I was starting this business with people, I get a lot of, I know we're running out of time, but it's interesting. And I've gotten a lot of feedback and people say they really admire my drive and ambition that I have for making it happen. I'm like, well, my back is against the wall. And just like you hinted at, you say like, well, you know, like when you have a deadline, how do you perform? And I say, I thrive in that. But the one thing that I have to also be careful of is my tendency to kind of like, don't eat like blinders on as I'm going towards that goal, all the people that I may leave to the side, because if I do not get myself back on my feet, there's a lot of people are going to be impacted as well. But if you're not on board with me along the way, you know, that's where I think things can happen. And I have to be very, very aware of that. That would be a great second podcast.
All right. Well, maybe
Topic or
we
something
can
like
come
that.
back to it. I want to. I know we're coming down to the end here, so I want to offer a couple resources to the folks out there that could be helpful. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mentioned before about conversational capacity is a book, and especially when you're in a team, about how to communicate, work towards solutions, and keep the conversation going without in a psychologically safe way. The other couple books that I recommend is one is Crucial Conversations. It's been around; it's millions of copies in
Mm-hmm.
print, and it's really about taking opposing opinions, strong emotions with high stakes is a crucial conversation. So take a look at that. There's some YouTube videos you can watch if you don't want to, if you want to get the nuts and bolts real quick. And the other one is Radical Candor. And it's really about using direct communication along with caring for the person on the other side. And that means, again, empathy. And I realize a lot of people have issues with empathy. But the first step is to recognize, think about it. Am I being empathetic? Am I thinking about the person who's communicating on the other side? Because they may not have the same view as I have. So those are a few different resources. I also encourage anybody who's got questions on this or wants to do some work around this, please reach out to either Henry or I. Be more than happy to support the folks out there, or at least steer them in the right direction, as well. But thanks for all the
Yeah,
sharing
that's
all your stories today, Henry.
yeah, no, that's the whole point of this, right? And yeah, the Crucial Conversations book, I don't remember the author, but that was great. I'd read that. For Radical Candor, that was Kim Scott. And fun fact, she was a former Googler. So Kim, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the podcast. The Craig Weber wrote the book Conversational Capacity.
Yeah, right.
And Craig, if you're also listening, we'd love to have you on the podcast and talk about the book in a little bit more. So yeah, really great resources. Highly recommend them. I've read all the books. And, and just to touch on it is like, the things that you read in these books are things that we're going to be discussing in more detail and hopefully share both of our experiences to kind of put it in the context and make more sense, because I've read hundreds of books over the years, and putting things into practice is a lot harder at times than when you just read it. It's like one thing, like I'm reading David Goggins' latest book now, and it's like, just get up and do your thing and have your goal, but it's like a lot harder to actually do that in practicality than it is read this story and get pumped. So really, it's just, we appreciate you listening to this podcast. Please keep giving us this feedback, and we hope to keep this valuable for you. So, you, the listener. So leave a comment
And if you have
what you want us to talk
suggestions
about. Yeah.
as well, right? So if you have suggestions, let us know what interests you. What are some of the challenges and the struggles that you're currently having? Let us know, because we really want to try to help. This is what this is about. And we want to try to make it real, not some theoretical type of thing. So the folks out there can really, get to where they want to reach their goals,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So,
all right, great. We're out of time. So thank you so much again, Jonathan. This was episode 4 of the Leadership Lab. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment about what you want us to talk about. Because again, we've got lots of experience to share. And thank you again for watching. So we'll catch you next week.
have a great week, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Great.